Hey guys, today, in this video, we're going to dive deep into the fascinating world of medieval Germany and explore the most powerful rulers who shaped its history. From Charlemagne to Maximilian I, we'll cover their life, achievements, battles, and how they influenced Europe for centuries. Before we start, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Your support really helps us bring more amazing history content to you. Charlemagne, also called Karl der Grosse in German and Carolus Magnus in Latin, was one of the greatest rulers of the medieval era, remembered as the Father of Europe. Born on April 2, 742, he was the son of Pepin the Short, the first Carolingian king. Charlemagne grew up during a time when Europe was fragmented, dangerous, and unstable. Small kingdoms fought each other, barbarian tribes raided lands, and the church tried to hold power together. From this background emerged a warrior king who built the largest empire in Western Europe since the fall of Rome. Early life and rise to power. Charlemagne's early years are mysterious. Very little is recorded about his childhood. He was educated in the traditions of the Frankish court, hunting, horse riding, sword fighting, and basic Latin learning. When his father Pepin died in 768, the Frankish kingdom was divided between Charlemagne and his younger brother Carloman. This was tradition. The Frankish lands were always split among sons, but this division caused tension. Charlemagne controlled the western part, while Carloman ruled the eastern portion. Both brothers often disagreed, and war between them seemed possible. However, fate decided differently. Carloman died suddenly in 771, leaving Charlemagne sole ruler of the Franks. At just 29 years old, he now controlled a kingdom stretching from the Pyrenees to central Germany. Military expansion. Charlemagne believed that a king's duty was to expand his lands and protect Christianity. He spent nearly every year of his reign in war, leading over 50 campaigns. First, he marched into Italy in 774, defeating the Lombards and becoming king of the Lombards as well as the Franks. Then, he fought the Saxons in northern Germany. The Saxons were pagans who resisted Christianity fiercely. Charlemagne launched a series of brutal campaigns lasting over 30 years. He destroyed their sacred tree, the Irminsul, forced conversions, and massacred rebels. The most infamous was the massacre of Verdun in 782, where 500 Saxons were executed after a rebellion. Harsh, but in his eyes necessary to unite Europe under one faith. Charlemagne also fought in Spain, crossing the Pyrenees in 778. His army clashed with Muslim forces. On the way back, his rear guard was ambushed at Roncesvalles Pass by Basque warriors. This event inspired the famous epic poem, The Song of Roland. Beyond these wars, he campaigned in Bavaria, defeated the Avars, a nomadic group, and extended Frankish control to modern Austria and Hungary. By the end of his reign, Charlemagne's empire stretched from the Atlantic Ocean to the Danube, and from the North Sea to central Italy. Administration and government. Charlemagne was not just a warrior, he was a brilliant administrator. Ruling such a vast empire was difficult, so he created a system of local governance. He divided the empire into counties, each ruled by a count, responsible for justice, taxes, and military defense. To keep them loyal, he sent inspectors called missi dominici, royal messengers, to check on counts and bishops. This prevented rebellion and corruption. He held yearly assemblies where nobles and church leaders advised him. He also standardized laws, combining Frankish traditions with Christian principles. His governance was a mix of old tribal customs and new centralized royal authority. Religious role. Charlemagne saw himself as a protector of Christianity. He built churches, supported monasteries, and gave land to the Pope. He forced conquered people to convert, often by violence. Yet, he also believed in the spiritual education of his people. He wanted priests to be properly trained, and sermons to be understood by common folk. His close alliance with the Pope gave him legitimacy. In return, the Church gained protection and expansion. Coronation as emperor. The greatest moment of Charlemagne's life came on Christmas Day, 800, while he was in Rome attending Mass at St. Peter's Basilica. Pope Leo III suddenly placed a golden crown on his head and proclaimed him Emperor of the Romans. This act shocked Charlemagne, who may not have expected it. With this, the Western Roman Empire, fallen in 476, was reborn as the Holy Roman Empire. Charlemagne became not just a king but an emperor, claiming authority over all Christian kings. This moment symbolized the union of Germanic power, Roman tradition, and Christian faith. It also set the foundation for the idea that German rulers would hold the imperial crown for centuries. The Carolingian Renaissance. Charlemagne was illiterate most of his life, but he valued learning deeply. He gathered scholars from across Europe, like Alcuin of York, at his court in Aachen. Together they launched what historians call the Carolingian Renaissance, a revival of education, art, and culture. Monasteries copied classical manuscripts, preserving Greek and Roman knowledge for future generations. Schools were established in monasteries and cathedrals, teaching boys grammar, logic, and religion. A new clear style of handwriting, Carolingian minuscule, was developed, which later influenced modern European writing. Charlemagne's reforms ensured that knowledge would survive the Dark Ages. Personality and lifestyle. Charlemagne was described as tall, strong, and imposing, standing over 6 feet at a time, when most men were shorter. He had piercing eyes, a firm voice, and an authoritative presence. He loved hunting, feasting, and swimming. Despite his wars, he cared for his people, passing laws against cheating in trade, protecting peasants, and supporting agriculture. He wore simple clothes compared to other rulers, preferring Frankish style over Roman luxury. Charlemagne was married several times and had many children, whom he tried to educate in both letters and warfare. Death and legacy. Charlemagne ruled for 46 years, creating the largest empire in Europe since Rome. He died on January 28, 814, in Aachen, and was buried in the cathedral he built there. His empire did not survive long after his death. His grandson divided it, leading to the future nations of France and Germany. Yet his legacy was enormous. He created the model of a Christian emperor, blending military power, faith, and culture. He inspired later German rulers like Otto the Great and Frederick Barbarossa. To this day, Charlemagne is seen as one of Europe's founding fathers. Why he was powerful. Charlemagne's power came from 3 sources: his sword, his crown, and his faith. His military strength expanded his empire across Europe. His coronation made him the first Holy Roman Emperor. His support of learning and religion shaped the cultural identity of Europe. In German memory, he was the first great ruler, and his legend became a standard for future emperors. He was not just a king. He was a myth, a warrior saint, a lawgiver, and a visionary. Otto I, remembered as Otto the Great, is considered the true founder of the Holy Roman Empire after Charlemagne. Where Charlemagne built an empire from scratch, Otto rebuilt German power from chaos and made the crown of Germany inseparable from the imperial crown. His reign, 936-973, turned East Francia, or medieval Germany, into the strongest kingdom of Europe. He defeated enemies inside and outside, allied with the Church, and created a system of rule that shaped Germany for centuries. Early life and inheritance. Otto was born on November 23, 912, the son of King Henry the Fowler, Duke of Saxony, who became King of East Francia in 919. Henry was a strong ruler who defended Germany against external threats like the Magyars, Hungarian raiders. From his father, Otto inherited discipline and the sense that Germany's survival depended on unity. When Henry died in 936, Otto, only 24 years old, was chosen king by the nobles. He was crowned at Aachen, Charlemagne's old capital, showing that Otto wanted to link himself to the great tradition of Charlemagne. Consolidating power. The early years of Otto's reign were not easy. German dukes and nobles were powerful and often acted like independent rulers. They resisted a strong monarchy. Soon after his coronation, Otto faced rebellions from Franconia, Bavaria, and even his own relatives. His younger brother Henry felt cheated out of power and revolted several times. Otto crushed these rebellions with determination. Unlike previous kings, he refused to allow dukes to become semi-independent. Instead, he appointed loyal family members and bishops to important posts. By defeating and reorganizing the nobility, Otto centralized authority in a way no German king had done since Charlemagne. Marriage politics. Otto also used marriages to strengthen his position. His first wife, Edith, was the sister of the English king Athelstan. This gave Otto ties to the Anglo-Saxon world and prestige in Europe. After Edith's death, Otto married Adelaide of Burgundy, widow of the King of Italy. This marriage gave him a claim to the Italian throne, which would later be crucial for becoming emperor. The Magyars and the Battle of Lechfeld, 955, one of Otto's greatest challenges, came from the east. The Magyars, nomadic horsemen from the Hungarian plain, had been raiding deep into Germany, Italy, and France for decades. They were fierce warriors, attacking suddenly, burning villages and escaping before armies could catch them. In 955, the Magyars launched a massive invasion, threatening to destroy Germany. Otto responded with full strength. At the Battle of Lechfeld, near Augsburg, he commanded a united German army of Saxons, Bavarians, Swabians, and even Bohemians. The battle was brutal, but Otto's disciplined heavy cavalry crushed the Magyars. Their defeat ended Magyar raids forever. Hungary later converted to Christianity, joining the European order. This victory made Otto the savior of Christendom and gave him legendary status. It also showed that Germany was now strong enough to defend all of Europe. Alliance with the Church. Otto understood that the Church was both a source of legitimacy and a way to control his empire. He created what historians call the Ottonian system. Instead of giving too much power to dukes, Otto gave lands and responsibilities to bishops and abbots. Since churchmen could not marry or pass on land to children, they depended on the king. This meant bishops became loyal administrators and allies of the crown. In return, Otto supported monasteries and church reform. His policy strengthened royal authority and linked the monarchy with religion. Coronation as Holy Roman Emperor, 962, Otto's ambitions extended beyond Germany. When chaos erupted in Italy, Pope John XII for help. In 961, Otto marched into Italy, secured control, and was crowned Emperor of the Romans by the Pope in 962. This moment revived Charlemagne's empire. From now on, the title of Holy Roman Emperor was connected with the German kingship. Every German kingship. Every German king would seek the imperial crown in Rome. Otto's empire stretched from the North Sea to southern Italy, making him the most powerful ruler in Europe. Cultural flourishing. The Ottonian Renaissance under Otto, a cultural revival flourished, sometimes called the Ottonian Renaissance. Monasteries became centers of learning, producing manuscripts, art, and architecture. Otto himself valued learning and invited scholars from Italy and Byzantium. His court promoted Latin literacy, religious reform, and the blending of Roman and German traditions. Art from this period, like illuminated manuscripts and grand cathedrals, shows a mix of classical and Christian influences. This cultural growth gave Otto's rule spiritual depth, not just military might. Conflicts and later years. Despite his greatness, Otto faced constant challenges. Nobles in Lorraine, Bavaria, and Franconia rebelled again and again. He also clashed with Slavic tribes along the Elbe River and tried to expand eastward with mixed results. In Italy, his authority was challenged by local rulers and popes who resisted imperial control. Still, Otto's prestige kept him dominant. In 972, he arranged the marriage of his son Otto II to Theophanu, a Byzantine princess. This alliance with the Byzantine Empire gave the Ottonians international recognition and prestige. By the end of his life, Otto had not only saved Germany, but connected it to the wider Christian world. Death and legacy. Otto died on May 7, 973, in Mimleben. He was buried at Magdeburg Cathedral, next to his first wife, Edith. His death marked the end of a legendary reign, but his dynasty, the Ottonians, continued to rule. His son Otto II and grandson Otto III inherited both the German throne and the imperial title. Otto the Great is remembered as the man who made Germany the center of medieval Europe. He combined military genius, political skill, and religious authority. Without him, the Holy Roman Empire might not have survived. Why he was powerful. Otto's greatness came from four achievements. First, he crushed rebellious dukes and centralized power. Second, he defeated the Magyars, saving Europe. Third, he allied with the Church, creating a strong system of rule. And fourth, he revived the imperial crown, making German kings emperors of the West. He turned Germany into the defender of Christendom and the heart of European politics. Like Charlemagne before him, Otto was more than a king. He was a symbol of unity, faith, and strength. Frederick I, better known as Barbarossa, remains one of the most legendary medieval German rulers. His name itself has an aura of power. Barbarossa means reared, a nickname given by the Italians, which became more famous than his real name. He ruled as King of Germany from 1152 and as Holy Roman Emperor from 155 until his death in 190. Barbarossa's reign was marked by ambition, military campaigns, conflict with the papacy, and attempts to bring unity and stability to the fractured German states. Unlike some emperors who were scholars or administrators, Frederick was a warrior king, whose charisma, physical presence, and military strength made him one of the most powerful figures of medieval Europe. When he took the throne, the empire was struggling with instability. German princes often acted like independent rulers, Italy resisted imperial authority, and the Pope was determined to keep emperors under control. Frederick set out to change that. His goal was nothing less than the restoration of the Roman Empire's glory, with Germany and Italy at its core. Barbarossa's character was central to his success. Tall, strong, and with a commanding red beard, he symbolized the image of a medieval knight. Chroniclers described him as brave, decisive, and charismatic, earning the loyalty of his knights and respect from his enemies. His rule began with a promise to end the civil wars that had torn Germany apart under his predecessor, Conrad III. To strengthen his position, he cleverly balanced diplomacy and force. He reconciled feuding nobles, confirmed their rights, but also demanded loyalty. Unlike weak rulers who depended too much on church support, Frederick used both military power and symbolic authority to assert his dominance. One of the biggest challenges of his reign was Italy. The wealthy cities of northern Italy, like Milan, resisted imperial control, preferring their own independence. The Pope also saw the emperor as a rival, not a partner. Frederick led multiple expeditions into Italy, trying to establish imperial supremacy. These campaigns were massive undertakings, with thousands of knights marching across the Alps into the wealthy plains of Lombardy. At first, he enjoyed success. He defeated rebellious cities, forced Milan into submission, and asserted his right as emperor. However, Italian resistance grew stronger, and Frederick's harsh treatment of cities made him unpopular. The most famous conflict was against the Lombard League, an alliance of northern Italian cities backed by the Pope. In 1176, Frederick suffered a major defeat at the Battle of Legnano. His army was crushed by the citizen militias of the League, proving that even the mightiest emperor could be humbled. This battle was a turning point. It showed the rise of city-states and the limits of imperial power. Despite defeat, Barbarossa was not broken. He made peace with the Pope and the cities in the Peace of Constance, 1083, which recognized the independence of Italian communes while still acknowledging the emperor's overlordship in theory. This compromise kept the empire intact, but showed that Frederick's dream of dominating Italy was limited by reality. In Germany, Frederick was more successful. He restored order by enforcing his authority over dukes and princes. He married Beatrice of Burgundy, gaining valuable lands in modern France. He strengthened his dynasty, the Hohenstaufens, by placing relatives in key positions. His reign gave Germany a sense of stability not seen in generations. Another defining part of his legacy was his relationship with the Crusades. When news spread of the fall of Jerusalem to Saladin in 187, Christendom was shocked. Frederick, now an elderly but still vigorous ruler, took the cross and led the Third Crusade alongside Richard the Lionheart of England and Philip II of France. His decision to join the crusade boosted his reputation as the defender of Christendom. In 1189, Barbarossa set out on a massive journey east with tens of thousands of troops. Unlike the kings of France and England, who traveled by sea, Frederick chose to march overland through Hungary, Byzantium, and Anatolia. His progress was remarkable, and his army feared across Europe and Asia Minor. However, tragedy struck in 1190. While crossing the Salif River in modern-day Turkey, Frederick drowned. Accounts differ. Some say he tried to swim, others that he fell from his horse. His sudden death shocked his army. Leaderless, many crusaders lost heart, and most of his troops returned home. The great hope of a German-led victory in the Holy Land died with him. Frederick Barbarossa's death gave birth to legends. Many Germans refused to believe he was truly dead. Myths grew that he was sleeping in a mountain, most famously the Kyffhauser Mountain, waiting to return in Germany's darkest hour. This legend lasted centuries, making him a symbol of German unity and hope. In reality, Barbarossa left behind a mixed legacy. He was strong, ambitious. Frederick II, Holy Roman Emperor, is often remembered as one of the most extraordinary rulers of the Middle Ages. Born in 194, he belonged to the powerful Hohenstaufen dynasty. His contemporaries called him Stupor Mundi, the wonder of the world, because of his brilliance, eccentricity, and unique combination of being both a warrior king and an intellectual. Unlike typical medieval rulers who spent most of their lives in battles and politics, Frederick was a true Renaissance spirit, centuries before the Renaissance even began. His reign spanned Germany, Sicily, and large parts of Italy, making him a ruler of diverse cultures, languages, and religions. His upbringing shaped his unusual character. Orphaned young, he grew up in Sicily, a land influenced by Latin, Greek, Arab, and Jewish traditions. Surrounded by scholars, poets, and scientists, Frederick developed a deep love for knowledge. He spoke multiple languages: Latin, German, Sicilian, Arabic, Greek, and was known for debating with scholars on philosophy, mathematics, astronomy, and even falconry. For many historians, he represents the first modern ruler of Europe. Yet his brilliance was matched by endless conflicts. The papacy saw Frederick as a dangerous rival, while German princes often resisted his authority. Much of his reign was spent balancing between being a philosopher king and a hardened emperor fighting endless wars. In Germany, Frederick inherited a fragmented kingdom. German dukes and princes were powerful, each ruling their lands with near independence. Instead of focusing heavily on Germany, Frederick left much of its administration to trusted allies and bishops. His real heart and energy lay in Italy and Sicily, where he built one of the most advanced states of the medieval world. In Sicily, Frederick introduced reforms that were centuries ahead of their time. He centralized administration, introduced uniform laws, and reduced the arbitrary powers of nobles. He issued the Constitutions of Melfi, 1231, also called the Liber Augustilis, which was a legal code that emphasized justice, state authority, and equal treatment under law. This made Sicily one of the best-governed regions in Europe. He also reformed the army, introduced taxation system, and supported trade, making his southern kingdom prosperous. Frederick's intellectual pursuits were legendary. He was passionate about science and the natural world. He established the University of Naples in 1224, one of Europe's earliest universities, to train lawyers and administrators for his state. He wrote a famous book on falconry, De Arte Venandi cum Avibus, The Art of Hunting with Birds, which was not only a guide for hunting, but also a scientific study of bird behavior. He conducted experiments on medicine, linguistics, and even human anatomy, some considered shocking for his time. Unlike many medieval rulers who relied only on the church for knowledge, Frederick often worked with Muslim and Jewish scholars, translating Arabic works into Latin and preserving ancient Greek wisdom. This open-mindedness made him controversial among Christian leaders, but admired by intellectuals. However, his reign was defined by his fierce struggle with the papacy. Popes feared his power, especially because his empire surrounded the papal states in Italy. They accused him of being an enemy of the church, sometimes even labeling him the Antichrist. Frederick, in turn, saw the papacy as a political rival more than a spiritual authority. This constant conflict resulted in multiple excommunications. Frederick's relationship with the Crusades was unique. In 1220, when he became emperor, he had promised to lead a crusade to the Holy Land. However, delays and conflicts with the Pope made people question his commitment. Finally, in 1228, 1229, Frederick launched the Sixth Crusade, but instead of fighting bloody wars, he used diplomacy. Through negotiations with the Muslim Sultan al-Kamil of Egypt, Frederick secured control over Jerusalem, Bethlehem, and Nazareth without a major battle. This was a remarkable achievement. He became the only Crusader king to capture Jerusalem through a treaty rather than war. However, the Pope and many Crusaders despised his methods, seeing him as arrogant and too friendly with Muslims. Yet, ordinary people admired his success. Another striking part of Frederick's reign was his cultural patronage. His court in Sicily became a center of poetry, philosophy, and science. The Sicilian school of poetry, which used the Italian vernacular, laid the foundations for later Italian literature, influencing Dante and others. He valued knowledge from across civilizations. Latin, Arabic, Greek, and his court was a place where East met West. Charles IV was one of the most politically skilled emperors of medieval Germany. Born in Prague in 1316 into the Luxembourg dynasty, he grew up in a Europe of fragmented states, feuding nobles and growing city-states. Unlike warriors such as Frederick Barbarossa or Frederick II, Charles excelled in diplomacy, law, and administration. His reign as Holy Roman Emperor, 1346-1378, focused on strengthening central authority, balancing powerful princes, and leaving a lasting legacy through laws, culture, and education. Early life and education. Charles was the eldest son of John of Bohemia. As a child, he was educated in literature, Latin, and politics, preparing him for a life of statecraft rather than only military command. He spent part of his youth at the French court, learning diplomacy and the subtleties of European politics. This early exposure to international courts helped him understand alliances, marriages, and treaties, skills he would later use to dominate imperial politics. Ascension to power. Charles became King of Bohemia in 1346, after the death of his father in the Battle of Crécy. Later that same year, he was elected King of the Romans, the German king, and eventually crowned Holy Roman Emperor in 1355. Unlike previous rulers who relied heavily on military conquest, Charles consolidated power through alliances, marriages, and legal reforms. He understood that in the fragmented Holy Roman Empire, diplomacy was as important as the sword. The Golden Bull of 1356, Charles V's most important achievement, was the Golden Bull of 1356, a legal document that established clear rules for electing the Holy Roman Emperor. The empire had been plagued by disputes and civil wars because succession was unclear. The Golden Bull declared that 7 princes called electors would have the exclusive right to choose the emperor. It also defined their roles, privileges, and responsibilities, stabilizing the empire. Politically, for centuries, this law ensured that imperial authority could function without constant internal war and gave Charles a lasting influence over Germany's political structure. Cultural patronage and Prague, Charles IV transformed Prague into a cultural and political capital. He commissioned the building of Charles Bridge, an architectural marvel of its time, connecting the old and new parts of the city. He founded Charles University in 1348, the first university in Central Europe to educate lawyers, administrators, and scholars. By doing so, he strengthened both the intellectual and administrative foundation of his empire. Prague became a hub of art, architecture, learning, and political activity, reflecting Charles' vision of a strong cultured monarchy. Diplomacy and marriages. Charles' reign was marked by smart diplomatic marriages. He married several times and arranged alliances that expanded Luxembourg influence across Europe. His careful network of family alliances secured borders, strengthened loyalty among nobles, and avoided unnecessary wars. Unlike Barbarossa or Frederick II, who relied on military might, Charles relied on his ability to negotiate, compromise, and outsmart rivals. Challenges and conflicts. Despite his skill, Charles faced challenges. Italian politics remained complicated, with the Papal States resisting imperial authority. German princes still jealously guarded their autonomy. Charles used diplomacy and concessions to maintain peace. He preferred treaties, negotiations, and marriage alliances over prolonged wars, which earned him a reputation as a clever and pragmatic ruler. Legacy. Charles IV left a lasting impact on the Holy Roman Empire. The Golden Bull of 1356 became the foundation of imperial politics for centuries. Prague flourished as a cultural and intellectual hub. Charles demonstrated that political power in medieval Germany could be maintained through law, diplomacy, and careful management of nobles rather than constant warfare. His reign marks a high point in the empire's administration and stability during the 14th century. Unlike earlier warrior emperors, Charles IV showed that intelligence, negotiation, and cultural patronage could also make a ruler powerful and respected. Why he was powerful? Charles V's strength lay not in military conquest, but in diplomacy, law, and cultural vision. Law and cultural vision. He balanced the ambitions of princes, strengthened the empire's political structure, and left a legacy that lasted long after his death in 1378. His ability to create stability through legal frameworks, alliances, and education made him one of the most effective emperors of medieval Germany. He demonstrated that power could be exercised with wisdom and foresight, not just with armies. Maximilian I, known as the Last Knight, was one of the most influential late medieval Holy Roman emperors. Born on March 22, 1459, in Wiener Neustadt, Austria, he inherited a Germany divided into hundreds of semi-independent principalities. Unlike earlier emperors, Maximilian understood that military conquest alone could not unify Europe. He relied on diplomacy, strategic marriages, reforms, and the symbolic power of the crown to expand his influence. His reign, 1493-1519, marked the transition from the medieval era to the early modern age. Early life and ambitions. Maximilian grew up surrounded by politics, war, and administration. His father, Frederick III, ruled Austria and nurtured his son in the traditions of the Habsburg dynasty. Maximilian learned the importance of alliances, negotiations, and dynastic power. From an early age, he was ambitious to expand Habsburg influence across Europe. He was not only a warrior but also a patron of arts, culture, and administration. Marriage politics, let others wage war. You, happy Austria, Mary Maximilian famously said, let others wage war. You, happy Austria, marry. He understood that strategic marriages could expand Habsburg power without costly wars. His marriage to Mary of Burgundy brought the wealthy Burgundian lands into Habsburg control. His children and grandchildren married into the royal families of Spain, the Netherlands, and other European kingdoms. Through these marriages, he laid the foundation for Habsburg dominance in Europe for centuries. This policy was revolutionary. It allowed the Habsburgs to gain vast territories without fighting battles for every inch of land. Military reforms and campaigns, although diplomacy was his primary tool, Maximilian was also a skilled military leader. He modernized the German army, introducing firearms, artillery, and professional infantry units. He personally led campaigns in Italy, the Low Countries, and against France to defend Habsburg claims. His military innovations helped prepare Europe for the warfare of the early modern period. Maximilian's efforts strengthened the emperor's authority over German princes, who increasingly relied on him for protection and coordination in wars. Administrative reforms. Maximilian also understood that governance required strong administration. He reorganized the Imperial Council, created efficient financial systems, and standardized laws in the Habsburg territories. He promoted trade, supported merchants, and encouraged technological innovations, including the use of the printing press, which helped spread knowledge and culture across his empire. His vision of a well-administered empire balanced both local autonomy and centralized authority. Cultural patronage. Maximilian was a Renaissance ruler in taste and vision. He commissioned artists, poets, and chroniclers to celebrate the Habsburg dynasty. He encouraged history writing, genealogies, and propaganda to solidify the dynasty's prestige. The famous triumphal arch and triumphal procession artworks immortalized his reign. Unlike earlier medieval emperors, he realized that culture and symbolism were powerful tools to project authority and legitimacy across Europe. Challenges and achievements. Maximilian faced challenges, including resistance from German princes, conflicts with France, and financial difficulties. Yet, his combination of diplomacy, marriage alliances, military innovation, and administrative reforms allowed him to overcome most obstacles. By the time of his death in 1519, the Habsburgs controlled Austria, Burgundy, the Netherlands, and had claims to Spain through dynastic marriages. His grandson, Charles V, would inherit a vast empire that dominated Europe and the New World. Maximilian's reign marked the beginning of a new era, moving Europe from medieval fragmentation to early modern centralized dynasties. Death and legacy. Maximilian died on January 12, 1519, in Wels, Austria. He left behind an empire strengthened through marriages, reforms, and alliances. He is remembered as the emperor who combined the last of the medieval knightly ideals with the emerging Renaissance vision. Maximilian's strategies ensured that the Habsburg dynasty remained dominant for centuries. He was a bridge between the medieval world and the modern era. Conclusion: the power of German medieval rulers from Charlemagne to Maximilian I, the history of medieval Germany, is a story of ambition, warfare, diplomacy, culture, and vision. Charlemagne united Europe under Christianity and created the idea of a continental empire. Otto the Great defended Germany and revived imperial authority. Frederick Barbarossa embodied military prowess and knightly ideals. Frederick II brought intelligence, culture, and law into imperial governance. Charles IV showed the power of diplomacy, legal reform, and cultural patronage. Maximilian I transitioned Germany from medieval chaos to early modern order, expanding the Habsburg legacy. These